Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here this weekend. Really fun vibes here at this event. So thank you so much to all the organizers and speakers and volunteers. I'm Mosh from the IPFS Foundation. IPFS is a project that spun out of Protocol Labs last year. After about 10 years, we have been building building blocks for working with content addressing and decentralized networks. I've been working in tech for a long time, mostly in the intersection of software systems and open society. And for my first job out of college, I interviewed with one of these social media platforms. I didn't take a second interview because I thought, I want to work on something more important than silly little online blurbs. So I don't really have any regrets, but wow, I was very wrong about the importance of silly little blurbs, because after 20 years, they have changed from a toy that randos on the internet were playing with to a real global force. Is social media a good thing or a bad thing for democracy? Pew Research showed in 2022, most people said social media is a good thing for democracy. The US is an outlier, actually. So you look at the graph, the US is the second one down, skewing very negative, but almost all of the other respondents still believe that social media is a good thing for democracy. So speaking of hope, there you go. There's not a separate imaginary world online, and people share things from our real world lives, our thoughts, feelings, photos, events, organizing, bringing our real world life into the matrix, and then using what happens online, the discourse, conversations, calls to action to change minds or create movements offline. So other than ALF jokes, what makes up a movement? There's a lot of different things, from policy pressure, community building, educational outreach, rapid mobilization. A lot of these have been in full view over the past 15 years especially. And I want to take a quick deep dive in this talk into the last two. And those are eyewitness reporting and documentary evidence as used on social media. I met a group from the Sudan Human Rights Network last month. They coordinate more than 40 grassroots groups in Sudan. They maintain archives, investigate and verify incidents, and coordinate resources. They have a few different archiving projects or archiving focuses for both open source and closed source media. So open source being social media, stuff that's publicly accessible, and closed source being direct submission of video or photos from their partner organizations. These examples get submitted, reviewed by a human, before being added to an archive or shared with their partners to near-term action like monitoring or aid. So eventually this evidence may get submitted to the International Criminal Court. There's a lot more on their website, but if you take away anything from this quick peek at their stack and their programs, it's this. Submitting a link to a social media post is just one of at least 8 steps in how organizations like these use, reuse, and make sense of what happens online. So the way that a post is packaged, access to the metadata that's included, how easy API access is, that all matters to how useful or how impactful a social media post can be and how it lives on after the initial event. Another example here is from the Starling Lab. It's a collaboration that partnered with the USC Shoah Foundation and Stanford University to build a framework for journalistic integrity. So this includes tools to hash images with IPFS CIDs up front, but also inspect the source and provenance of photos. They've even partnered with phone and camera manufacturers to bake EXIF data like GPS location and timestamp info into the image metadata. I know this morning said someone proposed, let's scrub all of the metadata from images and media. I just want to urge you to consider that sometimes anonymity is a goal, sometimes provenance and verification is an oppositional goal. So the Starling Project published an interactive article in Rolling Stone magazine last year. It's pretty cool. If you click the button in the lower left of these photos, you can inspect it with Starling tools and see all of the metadata. So Blue Sky also has the same verification built in through its use of IPLD, which makes it a really powerful primitive, not just for designing open networks and growing a community of 33 million users online, but also for what you can do with this media outside of the network after the Skeet. So if you take one thing away from this talk, it's that social media artifacts are part of information journeys and pipelines far beyond what fits in a text box, and I think we should be building accordingly. So I want to seed a few ideas for ATProto and our community here to make a better social media and web landscape. The first is that ATProto has been designed to outlast Blue Sky, the company, right? And if you think about it, I think Blue Sky is delivering an impressive and incredible alternative to Twitter, but in middle-income countries, most people don't use Twitter. So 10 to 25% of people are on Twitter, 60 to 90% are on WhatsApp and Facebook, and they're prioritizing peer-to-peer and interpersonal communications maybe more than broadcasting. So those are forms of social media that are incredibly powerful and influential for people in a lot of parts of the world. So I urge us all to think about those types of interactions next and building alternatives for that. A second one is policy. So user intent proposal, I think recently shipped on the Blue Sky GitHub. This is a really great policy point to consider standardizing across the world, because with pipelines, like I was referring to earlier, they're scraping, and I think Fedico is showing this, Blue Sky is just one platform among many that these systems need to interoperate with. And so if we can have standardized intents or policies for data usage, it would make it a lot easier for those to be incorporated into these platform-wide tools. Another one is fighting bots and misinformation. I think 2010s were like a golden era for social media, and then the bots came. There has been research showing that a post on social media solidifies sentiment within 50 to 70 minutes. So if something's going to go viral, it happens within basically an hour. You have about an hour to fight misinformation before it really starts to spread and get locked in. And so all of our bot fighting and misinformation efforts, I think, have to be really cognizant of the fact that we have a really small window to take action. So build some bot fighter robots. Another one is content creation. So in the chain of content creation, in how video streams get made, or images or photos get captured and processed and verified, please don't lose that metadata, and please content address everything. That will become incredibly valuable, I think, in the future for moderation, for reuse, for archiving, for processing. Another area is export and archiving, so thinking about how this integrates with existing web archiving tools like Web Recorder and other tools that are out there. And finally, thinking about analysis tools. There have been some really fantastic analysis tools or inspectors, playgrounds like CredBlue, for the Blue Sky community. I think another powerful layer for these analysis tools is incorporating things that happen outside the social network, like weather, natural disasters, election cycles, Taylor Swift's album release schedule, whatever you have, bringing events from the outside world and corroborating it or correlating it with activity that happens within a social network. So those are just some of the analysis tools that I'd love to encourage everyone to think about building. So speaking of building, within the IPFS project, we have, I think, two major technical and product focuses for this year. One is pushing for more decentralization from the hosted gateways, which is pretty unrelated to the Blue Sky and ATProto communities. The other one is more modularity. So we've had modularity in our docs and website for 10 years. I think it's time to make it real and practical. We have 3 initiatives that are going on. What we've seen over the years is that people are just carving out parts of this very complex, sprawling project and making it their own, and taking the parts that they want to use, that you want to use, building your own implementations, maybe different libraries and languages. And so we want to double down on this. The first is the Dazzle initiative. You can find the website at dazzle.ing. This is a strict subset of IPFS CIDs and IPLD. It's intended to be much more lightweight, easy to use. Published a spec in December, and there are 9 implementations today, some of which didn't know they were implementations until we published the spec. We sort of worked backwards to see what are people actually what are people actually implementing, what do they need to use in their systems. Dazzle is part of a series of very cheesy jokes or puns, because we also have Razzle, so Razzle Dazzle, Mazzle for metadata, BDAZZLE for big or Blake 3 Dazzle data. And all of these essentially form a family of specs that we hope will make content addressing much easier to use in any kind of web application. You can just take the pieces off the shelf that you need. We're preparing for an IETF submission in July and feeling pretty good about that, so cross your fingers and come work with us to make that real. The second initiative is CID profiles. I don't know how many people here have worked with CIDs, but we promise unique fingerprints, and we want to give you unique fingerprints. Right now, there are a lot of different defaults that can be configured to yield lots of different CIDs, and we want to make it much easier through a system of profiles to know exactly what you're asking for and what you're going to get. I put deterministic in quotes because it's actually deterministic today. It's just determined by a series of incredibly arcane settings. So we want to make that easier to use. We have a discussion on the IPFS Developer Forum. A proposal is coming out in April, and that would be a great one to get some feedback and ideas on. The last is CID Congress. This is a series of online meetings for content addressing nerds. Maybe there are some of you out there. Please come and talk about and improve CIDs, IPLD, CAR files, or find me today or tomorrow. But if you want to come to this online meeting, share your work, share your complaints, share your feedback or ideas, we'd love to have that. The next two are coming up in April and June, and you can find those on the IPFS Luma. I'll be sharing those links out too. The last thing I'd like to put out a plug for is that we are running a grants program focused on data utilities that work with IPLD, IPFS, CIDs, et cetera. They're small to mid-sized grants with 3 focus areas. One is CAR archive tools and utilities. The second is Dazzle testing suite. And then number 3 is improving data utilities for content addressing generally. So if you're interested in that, please check out the website or come find me. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you so much to the teams and people who've been building content addressing tools and systems over many, many years, especially Starling Lab, Numbers Protocol, the folks at Sudan Human Rights Hub for sharing their workflows, needs, and processes, and all of the people here who helped shape these projects and initiatives. You can find me on email or Blue Sky or in person here. And thank you very much, and keep on building in the free world.